It's remarkable how a seemingly small act, like lending a hand to a neighbor, can set off a cascade of transformations in one's life. As I sit here, contemplating all that has transpired, it dawns on me that a single, seemingly insignificant choice can trigger a cascade of unforeseen events. I would like to take a moment to present myself. My name is Mark, and I've always seen myself as just an ordinary person. I maintain a standard 9-to-5 routine, steer clear of any unnecessary drama, and consistently strive to be a supportive friend to those in my life. My life was straightforward, consistent, and in many respects, that was precisely how I preferred it. I have resided in this neighborhood for quite some time now. Adam and Sarah, my neighbors, embodied the ideal couple. That was my impression, at the very least. Their marriage resembled those cinematic portrayals, where every detail appeared perfect. Adam was an accomplished attorney, exuding success and self-assurance. Sarah, his wife, radiated beauty and charm, her smile a constant presence that lit up the room. They were the kind of couple that inspired admiration, the ones you'd spot at neighborhood gatherings and believe had everything perfectly aligned. Though we were never particularly close, we would share polite greetings whenever our paths crossed. I would greet Adam as he tended to his lawn, and occasionally, Sarah would strike up a conversation with me during my morning jog. The dynamic between the neighbors was as expected. Just that, and nothing beyond. One afternoon, as I was returning home from work, everything shifted. As I rolled into the driveway, my gaze fell upon Sarah at her front door, her expression tinged with a hint of distress. She beckoned me closer, and I sensed that something was amiss. "Hello, Mark, I hope this message finds you well. I apologize for the interruption, but I would greatly appreciate your assistance with a matter," she inquired, her tone gentle yet laced with a hint of concern. I found myself uncertain about the kind of assistance she required. It was common for neighbors to request assistance, yet I had never been called upon to lend a hand to Sarah before. She typically managed everything with ease, yet in that moment, she was gazing at me with a warm, inviting smile. I thought it would be an easy task, perhaps shifting a box or repairing a dripping faucet. "Sure thing, what's going on?" I approached her and spoke. "Adam is away for a few days on a business trip, and I've been experiencing some issues with the garage door," she explained. "It keeps freezing, and I'm uncertain about the next steps to take. I was hoping you might be able to glance at it briefly." Initially, I detected a small pause. Adam was a decent fellow, and I was cautious not to overstep my bounds. Yet, it was merely a garage door, wasn't it? What could possibly go wrong? Moreover, Sarah had consistently been warm and approachable, so I thought assisting her would be quite simple. "Absolutely," I replied, making my way to the garage. While we toiled on the door, our conversation flowed effortlessly. Her presence made conversation effortless, and I couldn't help but admire her grace and poise. From afar, I had always held her in high regard, but now, as she stood before me, I couldn't help but notice the striking allure she possessed. Something about her drew attention, her warmth, her smile, the way she carried herself, making it impossible to overlook. However, I swiftly set those thoughts aside. I was not the type to allow my feelings to overwhelm me. Moreover, she was wed to Adam, and I had no intention of doing anything that could create complications in our relationship. After a brief period of fiddling with the garage door, I successfully restored its functionality. "There we go, that should do it," I remarked, a wave of satisfaction washing over me. "Thank you very much, Mark. I truly don't know what I would have done without you," she remarked, her smile warm and sincere, her eyes glimmering in the golden afternoon light. "Glad to assist," I responded, aiming to maintain a cheerful and approachable vibe. She took a step back, her gaze lingering on the door with a sense of relief, before turning her eyes back to me. "It's truly a pleasure to have someone like you living next door. Adam always appears to be swamped with work, and I really dislike interrupting him with matters like this." I laughed lightly, brushing it aside, feeling grateful. "It's no trouble at all, I'm just pleased to have been of assistance." We lingered in silence for a moment, and I sensed that this was more than merely a neighborly interaction. Sarah had a unique ability to make you feel like you were more than just a neighbor, more than merely someone lending a hand. There was an undeniable change in the atmosphere surrounding us, an elusive sensation that I struggled to articulate. It seems it's time for me to take my leave. I'm certain you have other matters to attend to, she remarked, offering me a courteous smile. I acknowledged with a nod. I suppose I ought to head indoors as well. If there's anything more you require, feel free to reach out. Thank you once more, Mark. Text, I truly value it, she remarked, retreating into her home. As I strolled back to my own abode, an unsettling sensation lingered, as if something had shifted in the air. Perhaps it was merely my tendency to overanalyze, yet I sensed a delicate change in the atmosphere, an undeniable energy that captured my attention. I attempted to dismiss it from my thoughts, convincing myself it was insignificant. Ultimately, she was bound by marriage. Yet, beneath the surface, a question lingered in my mind: was there something deeper at play here than I had initially perceived? In the coming weeks, I discovered myself caught up in an unforeseen situation. It began with little moments, informal meetings, light-hearted conversations, and straightforward assistance with various tasks. Yet, as I continued to assist Sarah, I couldn't shake the feeling that our relationship was evolving, despite my efforts to dismiss it. Initially, it seemed quite unremarkable. Occasionally, Sarah would reach out or stop by to seek assistance with various tasks around the house. Nothing that appeared particularly pressing, just the usual neighborly matters. At times, it was merely a matter of addressing a dripping faucet or rearranging a few pieces of furniture. At times, it served merely as a pretext to invite someone over during her husband Adam's business trips. Initially, it didn't cross my mind as anything significant. I was simply lending a hand, doing my part as a considerate neighbor. As the weeks went by, the requests began to increase in frequency. Initially, I told myself that she simply preferred not to trouble Adam with matters that seemed too trivial. He was perpetually occupied with his responsibilities, and I grasped that. Yet, there was a distinct change in the air. With each moment I offered my assistance, the bond we shared seemed to grow stronger, reflected in our conversations and the way her gaze met mine. One afternoon, I was immersed in my work in the garage when I caught the unmistakable sound of footsteps drawing near. I looked up to find Sarah in my driveway, her expression noticeably more somber than normal. "Hello Mark, I hope you don't mind me reaching out once more, but I find myself in need of your assistance with something." She spoke with an almost apologetic tone, yet I could detect a flicker of something deeper in her eyes. I cleaned my hands on a rag and approached her, making an effort to maintain a neutral expression. "Sure, what's happening?" After a brief pause, she gathered her thoughts and spoke once more. "The kitchen sink is utterly blocked, and I've exhausted all my options. Adam typically handles matters like this, but he's away once more, and I hesitate to trouble him over something so minor." I gave a slight nod. "Okay, let me gather my supplies. We'll take care of it." As we stepped inside, I couldn't help but observe that she appeared more at ease than she typically did. In the kitchen, she recounted the events, and I set about fixing the sink. I concentrated on the task before me, striving to maintain a clear mind, yet as I toiled, I found it impossible to overlook her proximity, observing me with keen interest. Her gaze was palpable, and against my better judgment, I found myself becoming more aware of my own presence than I typically would. Her gaze held a certain magic, a quality that enveloped us, making it seem as though we were the sole inhabitants of that space. She remained quiet, observing my efforts, yet the stillness that enveloped us felt unlike any we had experienced previously. Within a matter of minutes, I resolved the issue. I activated the faucet, and the water cascaded effortlessly once more. "Here it is." "As good as new," I remarked, taking a step back from the sink and drying my hands. "Thanks, Mark. I truly appreciate it," she said, her voice gentle, as though it emerged from a place more profound than usual. I smiled, yet her tone held a quality that quickened my heartbeat. A delicate change lingered in the atmosphere, an elusive sensation that I struggled to identify. I attempted to dismiss it. "Absolutely, as I mentioned, I'm glad to assist." She offered me a smile, yet this time it lacked the usual warmth of a friendly, neighborly gesture. It felt distinct, enveloping, more personal, and it stirred a tide of uncertainty within me. We lingered in silence for a moment, words unspoken, yet an unusual tension simmered in the air between us. The tension was not born from anger or frustration. It was the kind that emerged from an unvoiced tension, a reality we both chose to ignore. "Would you like a coffee or perhaps something else?" she inquired, shattering the stillness. "Absolutely, let's go for it," I responded, attempting to maintain a nonchalant demeanor. Yet within me, an unsettling tug began to form in my chest, the sort of sensation that arises when an event looms on the horizon, though its nature remains a mystery. We gathered at the kitchen table, quietly enjoying our coffee. The dialogue flowed easily, yet I couldn't shake the feeling of her gaze lingering on me. I attempted to brush it aside, concentrating on my cup, yet the intensity of her stare was difficult to overlook. Her gaze held a depth that transcended mere friendship or the casual niceties of neighborly interaction. "I've been wanting to express my gratitude for all the support you've provided," she said, her voice gentle and heartfelt. "Adam is constantly occupied with his work, and I understand that he carries a sense of guilt for not being around more often. However, I hesitate to trouble him with trivial matters." I nodded, feeling a sense of uncertainty about how to reply. "It was my pleasure. As I mentioned, it's really no bother whatsoever." Her smile returned, yet it carried a subtle shift this time. Her expression held a quiet intensity, as if she were attempting to convey something deeper, something that remained unspoken. My heart raced, yet I made an effort to stay composed. "You know, it's quite pleasant to have someone nearby who can genuinely repair things," she continued, her tone nearly nonchalant. "I sometimes hesitate to reach out to Adam for assistance with minor matters, yet your kindness and readiness to help have always been appreciated. It truly matters." The gravity of her words resonated within me, and I couldn't ignore the nuance in her tone, suggesting there was a depth beyond mere appreciation. The way she gazed at me stirred an indescribable feeling within me. I cast the thought aside. Sarah's marriage to Adam created a barrier around my emotions, rendering everything I felt completely out of reach. I found myself reflecting on that, yet as she offered me a small, knowing smile, I couldn't shake the thought of whether she sensed it as well, the shift, the transformation and the dynamics that had existed between us. In the days that followed, an unsettling sensation lingered, suggesting that there was an unspoken tension between Sarah and me. Each time I encountered her, I made an effort to maintain my composure, yet it grew more challenging with every passing moment. Her appearance held a captivating quality, and the manner in which she addressed me was laced with an unmistakable subtext. It felt like she was conveying a message without uttering a word, yet I found myself unable to inquire directly. I repeatedly reassured myself that it was insignificant, that I was merely conjuring illusions. Ultimately, she was wed to Adam, and I had consistently honored their bond. Yet, whenever I encountered her, an inexplicable pull tugged at me, a peculiar bond that defied explanation. The situation was bewildering and exasperating, and I began to sense that I was in far deeper than I could handle. As the day drew to a close and I wrapped up my tasks in the garage, a gentle knock echoed from the door. I dried my hands on a rag and strolled over to the door, anticipating it would be a neighbor seeking something inconsequential. As I swung the door open, I was taken aback to find Sarah waiting there, her demeanor unusually grave. "Hey Mark," she said, her voice gentle. "May I have a moment of your time?" A knot twisted in my stomach as I observed her standing there, her deep, almost probing eyes fixed on me, causing my heart to race uncontrollably. "Absolutely. Step right in." As she entered, it became immediately clear that this was no ordinary visit. She appeared altered, exhibiting signs of anxiety, perhaps even a hint of unease. The atmosphere was thick with tension, leaving me feeling quite unsettled. "Is all well?" I inquired, attempting to maintain a nonchalant demeanor, yet I sensed that something was amiss. She paused, her gaze darting around the room as if in quest of the perfect words to express herself. "I find myself at a loss for words, yet there's something important I must share with you." My heart raced with excitement. My heart raced as I attempted to decipher her expression. "What is it, Sarah?" She inhaled deeply, pausing for a moment, her gaze fixed intently on mine. "I've been pondering this for some time now," she said thoughtfully, "and I simply can't overlook it any longer. There's a sensation within me, an inexplicable feeling that I struggle to articulate." I endeavored to maintain my composure, yet I could sense my stomach churning with unease. I sensed the direction this was taking, yet I felt powerless to intervene. "Sarah, No, just allow me to express this." She cut in, her tone growing increasingly pressing. "I wish to avoid any discomfort between us, yet I can no longer act as if everything remains the same. I've begun to develop feelings for you, Mark. It's more than just appreciation for all the assistance you've provided. It goes beyond that." My thoughts faded into silence. I stood there, motionless, gazing at her, attempting to comprehend the weight of her words. This was not occurring. I had been acquainted with Sarah for some time, and she was wed to my neighbor, who was also my friend. This couldn't possibly be happening. "Sarah, you're tied to Adam," I murmured, my voice scarcely audible. "This doesn't seem correct." She moved nearer, her gaze brimming with feeling. I understand it's intricate," she murmured gently. "Yet, what I am experiencing is genuine. I can no longer ignore it. I acknowledge your presence, Mark. I observe your demeanor, the manner in which you interact with others. Your kindness and strength shine through. You embody qualities that Adam lacks. I never imagined I would experience such emotions. However, I certainly do." A wave of disbelief and guilt surged through me. This was unimaginable. It was impossible for her to be saying this to me. "Sarah, I appreciate your kind words. However, this is not something we are capable of accomplishing. You are in a marital union. A family is part of your life." She cast her gaze downward, her expression gently clouded by sorrow. "I understand. I've attempted to overlook it, to suppress it. Yet, each time I encounter you, it becomes increasingly difficult. I understand that I ought not to experience these emotions. However, I certainly do. I simply had to share this with you." I remained motionless, attempting to collect my thoughts. My heart raced within me, yet I understood the path I needed to take. I had to put a stop to this. Regardless of the allure, I simply couldn't turn my back on Adam in this way. "Sarah, I started, but once more she interrupted me. I understand this may come as a surprise to you." She spoke hurriedly, her voice quivering. "This was never my intention, yet I found myself unable to hold it in any longer. I simply wanted to share this with you." I stepped back, creating a distance between us. "I see your point, but this is not something we can proceed with. You are in a marital union. Your existence intertwines with Adam. I cannot be involved in that. I apologize." A lengthy silence lingered between us. I noticed the pain reflected in her gaze, yet I was certain I was making the right choice. I had to put a stop to this. At last, she gave a slight nod, her lips quivering. "I comprehend. I apologize, Mark. I never intended to complicate matters." I inhaled deeply, seeking to find my balance. "It's all right. I appreciate you sharing that with me, but I believe it would be wise for us to take a moment to pause and reflect. This is not a path we can pursue any further. For the benefit of us both." She nodded once more, her eyes filled with unspoken sorrow. "I comprehend." With that, she pivoted and strode toward the door, leaving me there, awash in a blend of relief and bewilderment. I was certain I had made the correct choice, yet it did not simplify the circumstances at all. I needed to keep in mind that my motivations were grounded in the right intentions, for Adam, for the sake of respect, and for my own tranquility. Yet, beneath the surface, a part of me pondered what might unfold next. Would Sarah honor my boundaries, or would she persist in her actions? What would become of our connection, aware of the emotions we shared yet never dared to pursue? The days following Sarah's revelation seemed to extend endlessly. Each time I encountered her, an undeniable sense lingered that a shift had occurred in our relationship. There was a quiet, yet palpable tension that lingered in the air whenever we found ourselves in the same space. I could perceive it in her gaze, as well. Her gaze lingered on me, as if she were on a quest for something deeper. Yet, I had come to my conclusion. I was resolute in my commitment to honor both her and Adam, regardless of the challenges it presented. It was peculiar, however. Prior to Sarah confiding in me, we maintained a cordial neighborly relationship, assisting one another with minor chores from time to time. Yet, at this moment, each exchange was laden with words left unsaid. It wasn't merely uncomfortable for me. She was starting to feel uneasy as well. It was evident she was attempting to find her way through this new situation, yet it was obvious she was uncertain of how to proceed. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I found myself on the porch, a chill drink in hand, seeking a moment of tranquility after a long day of toil, before surrendering to the embrace of sleep. The refreshing breeze was pleasant, yet my thoughts were in a whirlwind. Sarah's confession lingered in my mind, refusing to fade away. It felt as though it was seared into my memory, and whenever I shut my eyes, her face appeared, her delicate eyes gazing at me as if pleading for something deeper. While I lingered in my reverie, the unmistakable sound of footsteps drew near. As I glanced over, I spotted Sarah making her way along the path that connected her home to mine. My heart raced, and for a fleeting moment, I pondered whether to retreat inside and feign ignorance of her approach. Just as I was about to take a step, she appeared right in front of me. "Mark," she murmured, her tone uncertain. "May I have a moment of your time?" A quiet sigh escaped me, a recognition that this was the very last thing I required at this moment. However, I wished to avoid any semblance of rudeness, so I simply nodded. "Absolutely. Please take a seat." She paused briefly, then settled next to me, her fingers restless in her lap. It was evident that she was in the midst of sorting through her thoughts, grappling with the uncertainty of how to navigate the aftermath of our encounter. It was hard to hold her accountable. It wasn't merely uncomfortable for me. It likely was more challenging for her. "I've been reflecting on my words from the other day." She started, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want to express my apologies if I caused any awkwardness between us." I shook my head, attempting to offer her some comfort. "Sarah, there's no need for you to say sorry. I comprehend. It's simply intricate." "I understand." She spoke, her tone laced with irritation. "I aimed to keep things simple, yet I found it impossible to hold back any longer. You have consistently supported me, and I suppose I became a bit perplexed." I was at a loss for words in that moment. Her face was a canvas of guilt, every line and shadow revealing the weight of her emotions. However, I was acutely aware that I could not permit this to escalate any further. I refused to be influenced by my emotions, regardless of their intensity. Sarah was in a marriage, and I happened to be a friend of her spouse. It transcended mere notions of right and wrong. It was fundamentally about respect, and I couldn't simply overlook that. "I see where you're coming from, Sarah." I spoke softly. "However, I believe it would be wise for us to pause and reflect for a moment. I prefer to keep things as simple as possible." She cast her gaze downward, her shoulders drooping in resignation. "I understand. I simply cannot fathom what was going through my mind." It was evident that she was conflicted, trapped in the struggle between her feelings and her loyalty to Adam. I empathized with her situation. This was a challenging situation for all parties concerned. A lengthy silence enveloped us, each of us adrift in our own reflections. The atmosphere was charged, and I sensed the gravity of the moment bearing heavily on us both. Yet, I was aware that I could not allow this to persist. I needed to clarify, once and for all, that I couldn't be involved in whatever was happening between us. "Sarah," I said, my tone steady yet soft. "I want you to understand that you matter to me. However, my feelings for Adam are also significant to me. He is my companion, and I won't allow anything to interfere with that bond." Her eyes brimmed with tears, and she hastily brushed them away, feeling a wave of embarrassment wash over her. I understand. This was never my intention. I have no desire to cause anyone pain. Text, I assured her that doing the right thing wouldn't cause any harm to anyone. I'm simply requesting that we maintain the previous arrangement, okay? Clarity has arrived. Say goodbye to any discomfort. She nodded, her lips quivering as she fought to maintain her poise. I comprehend. I truly do. I apologize for all that has transpired. I never intended to place you in this situation. I extended my hand and gently rested it on her shoulder, seeking to provide a sense of solace. It's all right, Sarah. I understand that this wasn't your intention. However, it's essential for both of us to let go and progress from this. For the benefit of all. She nodded once more, and I could observe the determination beginning to take shape in her expression. I'll give it my all, she murmured gently. I prefer not to complicate matters further than they already are. A subtle smile crossed my lips, a sense of relief washing over me as we finally aligned in our understanding. Excellent. That's all I seek. With that, Sarah rose, her demeanor steadier than it had been upon her arrival. I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me, Mark. Your words were exactly what I needed to hear. I observed her as she made her way back to her home, nodding in acknowledgement. As she faded into the horizon, a wave of relief enveloped me. It was going to be a challenge, yet I knew I had chosen wisely. I had established the limits, and now it was essential to adhere to them. For my benefit, for Adam's benefit, and for Sarah's benefit as well. Yet, beneath the surface, an unsettling sense lingered that this wouldn't be the final encounter with such a predicament. An unresolved tension lingered between us. A matter that neither of us could overlook indefinitely. I sensed that, eventually, we would confront it once more. The following days unfolded with an eerie tranquility, as if the chaos had momentarily subsided. The atmosphere felt lighter, yet the lingering heaviness of all that had occurred still enveloped us. Sarah had become more subdued during our encounters. The awkward glances had vanished completely. Her eyes were free of tension. It appeared that she had embraced the limits we established. That was my hope, at the very least. Yet, in spite of this, the discomfort that settled in my chest remained unshakable. Whenever I observed Sarah and Adam together, I found myself captivated by the way they engaged with one another. There was a sense of recognition between them, yet it lacked the warmth that could soothe my unease. It felt remote, as if they were merely performing the roles of a couple, yet lacking true engagement in their connection. Uncertainty enveloped the situation between them, yet an undeniable sense of something deeper lingered in the air. It was a truth that remained unspoken between them. On a quiet afternoon, while I tended to the bushes in my yard, seeking to distract my thoughts, I suddenly became aware of footsteps approaching from behind me. I pivoted to see Sarah positioned at the boundary of my yard, her hands fidgeting anxiously before her. "Hey Mark," she said, her voice gentle yet firm. "May we have a conversation?" I set the shears aside and cleaned my hands on my pants, observing how she was deliberately steering clear of making eye contact. I understood the essence of this situation. I had anticipated this moment, yet a part of me wished we could avoid revisiting this discussion once more. "Absolutely, Sarah. What thoughts are swirling in your head?" She moved nearer, her eyes glued to the earth, as though she were on a quest for the perfect words. "Lately, I've found myself deep in thought. Concerning all matters. Regarding your previous comments. And regarding Adam." I nodded, striving to maintain an even tone. "I comprehend. It's great to hear that you've taken some time to reflect on it." Despite our agreement to maintain the status quo, she pressed on, her voice trembling just a bit. "Yet, I find myself unable to shake this sense of inner turmoil. I'm uncertain whether remaining with Adam is the best choice. Not when I sense an absence of something essential. I cannot ignore the emotions I have for you." The admission lingered in the atmosphere, dense and palpable. The tension was palpable once more. A part of me yearned to retreat, to create an even greater chasm between us. Yet, a different part of me found it impossible to overlook the reality of her words. I experienced my own emotions as well. Yet, I had committed to a vow, and breaking it was not an option. I understand, Sarah. I spoke with a steady yet gentle tone. However, I cannot be the one to assist you in resolving this matter. It's essential to come to a resolution with Adam. I refuse to be involved in any more confusion. She gazed at me, her eyes probing my features for an elusive answer. Maybe it was a signal that I was being untruthful, that I was on the verge of surrendering. However, I was unable to do so. I needed to remain resilient. I know, she whispered, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I can't shake the feeling that everything is unraveling. I have no desire to cause pain to anyone, particularly not Adam. Yet, I cannot overlook the tension that has been growing between us. I let out a breath, moving nearer to her. However, maintaining a sufficient distance between us. Sarah, you need to have a conversation with Adam. It's something you must do for him. You deserve it. This connection we share, it's not the answer. It's simply an added layer of perplexity. She brushed a tear from her cheek, nodding with a measured grace. Indeed, you are correct. I'm at a loss for how to make things right. I'm uncertain if it's within my capabilities. You'll find a way, I murmured gently. Ultimately, the choice rests with you, Sarah. I'm unable to do that for you. Regardless of the circumstances, it's essential to maintain honesty with both yourself and Adam. She took a shaky breath, attempting to regain her composure. I shall. I assure you. We lingered in that moment, the silence enveloping us, dense and palpable. At last, she pivoted to depart, her posture upright, her pace measured. Yet, just as she approached the gate, she hesitated and cast a look back over her shoulder. Mark, she whispered gently. I shifted my gaze in her direction, anticipating her words. Thank you, she expressed, her voice brimming with feeling. For all things. For your honesty with me. I offered a subtle smile, giving a slight nod. Look after yourself, Sarah. With that, she strolled out of my yard and made her way back to her home. I observed her departure, a wave of relief enveloping me. This was the moment. The boundaries were established, and silence enveloped the space. The situation between Sarah and Adam was no longer something I needed to worry about. I had given my all, and now it was time for me to turn the page. The weeks that followed were more subdued. Sarah and Adam appeared to slip back into their usual rhythm, yet I sensed a subtle shift in the dynamics of their relationship. Adam appeared more engaged, while Sarah seemed to show less detachment. Yet, no matter what was unfolding between them, it was beyond my ability to mend. They had to navigate their challenges on their own. For me, life gradually resumed its usual rhythm. I dedicated my time to my projects, pursued my interests, and enjoyed moments with my friends. I came to understand that aiding someone doesn't always involve fixing their issues for them. At times, it involved allowing them to navigate their own choices, even when it was challenging to observe. Ultimately, I gained a profound understanding of boundaries, respect, and the significance of making sound decisions, even when feelings obscure your clarity. Though it posed challenges, it was the correct course of action. I sincerely hope that Sarah has discovered the tranquility she longed for. No matter what lay ahead, I was certain that I had given my all, and that was all I could offer.